Network. This is September the 10th, 2019. Boy, it's hard to believe that it's already September, is it not? So glad to have everybody here today. We've got a really interesting case to discuss, and maybe even had a little bit of daylight in the last few days. That's going to be a little bit encouraging and hopeful, I think, with respect to this case. And it's just going to give us an opportunity to maybe dig into some decisions that sometimes have to be made surrounding conservatorship, surrounding different sorts of rights restrictions and other things of that nature. So I think it should be a fairly instructive and good discussion that we can have. And I want to invite other people to jump in and ask questions and participate as well. So today we have with us, let's see if I can remember everybody that we have. So I think if I can just kind of call roll among this group and just get you to say, yes, I'm here. So we have Christine Theophanopoulos, the Independent Support Coordinator.
Yes, I'm here.
And we have Christine Hanna, the Respite Coordinator or Respite Director. Is that correct?
Yes, I'm the Administrator for the Nashville RHA unit.
Okay, right. And Reuben Joyner is there with you, and Reuben is the Home Manager, or I'm not sure I know your title, Reuben.
He's the Respite Coordinator.
Okay. And then, let's see, we also have Dr. Jenny Mathai on the phone, who's a regional office psychologist and consultant for this case. Is that correct?
Yes, I'm here.
All right, great. And say Chris Warrington, who is also a senior psychological examiner in the West Regional Office, has had some involvement with this case, and you're on here as well, Chris. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And let's see, is there anybody else that is here on behalf of the case today?
This is Jennifer Osteen, DA.
I'm sorry, Jennifer, I didn't mean to exclude you there. So Jennifer was the behavior analyst at Harold Jordan Center with her. So I guess who is going to be the person to kind of start out and give us a little bit of a thumbnail sketch of everything? Okay, nobody wants to jump up to the plate to do that. Maybe we can just start with a few questions. But before we do that, I'd like to have the folks that I just called out to kind of introduce themselves. Just give a brief introduction of yourself and tell us a little bit about who you are, how you got into this field, anything else that might help us understand who you are. So we'll start with Christine.
Okay, I'm Christine Theophanopoulos. I started in the field as a teacher for early intervention in 1990. I then was a coordinator for HATS for several years for early intervention and developmental services in some different places and supervised rural counties. And then I was an ISC for Neighborhood Network for about 10 years. And then I've been an ISC supervisor at the ARC for 5.
Oh, okay. So
I've been around a long time.
You've been doing this a long time, and you work with, it seems like...
1990.
1990. Been working since 1990. Well, that's not that old. That's not that long ago. But you seem to have a lot of the more difficult cases, it seems, that are on your caseload.
Yes, sir. I'm drawn to that population.
You're drawn to that population. Okay. Well, you're after my own heart there. That's great. All right. And then let's see, Christine Hanna.
Yes. So I have been in this field since, about 2003. I started out my education at NTSU. I took a social work class and had an internship with the Department of Children's Services. And then I interned at Social Development Services, had an internship there, and that's where I got introduced to the field. And they hired me right out of college, and I've been in the field ever since then. Moved out of state, and I have moved since back to Tennessee, but remained in the field out of state, and just have a love for these individuals.
Which skills location were you in?
In Oklahoma, Coffee County.
Okay. So were you at the central office, or were you at their skills program there in Oklahoma?
I was at the day program. I was the manager there.
Okay. Excellent. So you know, is it Harriet? I can't remember her last name.
Yeah, she actually was, I know who you're talking about, but Miss Faye? Miss Faye?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, right. Yeah, I should have mentioned her too. Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's great. And you got with you Ruben Joyner?
Yes, sir. My name is Ruben Joyner. I'm a rescue coordinator. Started as a DSP, RSD I did that for 5 years. At that respite and as a residential counselor. Then I got hired as house manager over at RHA Respite. I did that for a couple of years, and now I'm the coordinator at the RHA Respite. So I've been in the field about 2 years altogether. I enjoy working with this population, and pretty good at it.
Well, Raven, you've been through, so you still say you enjoy working with this population. It's a great thing. And so I'm glad to have you on the call today.
Yes, sir.
And let's see. Let's go to Dr. Jenny Mathai. You're on the phone.
Well, like I say, in terms of my education, I went to Peabody and got my master's in education as well as in counseling. From there, I went to Vanderbilt and got my doctorate degree in counseling. During all of that time, I worked, and so I think I started out working over at Harris Hillman School, which is one for multiple handicapped people.
Right.
From there, I went to corrections and worked with youth for a few years. Then I went to Pleasant Bottom and stayed there a few years as an examiner until I came over to the regional office in 2005.
Well, that's great. And I know you have had a lot of interaction with Amber, the person we're going to be discussing today. So I'm very anxious to hear what your observations have been. And then we also have Chris Warrington. Chris Warrington? Maybe we lost Chris. And did Steve Jacobs ever come on the line?
Yeah, I'm here, Bruce.
Okay, excellent. So I'm very glad to hear your voice there. So can you? So we're talking about Amber today. That's going to be the pseudonym of the person that we're talking about. Could you just introduce yourself just real quickly and tell us a little bit about how you got into this work?
Me?
Yes.
Oh, okay. My name is Steve Jacobs. I work as an advocate with the ARC Tennessee. I've been in the field for about 40 years, and I don't want to bore you with a long story, but it's Heather we're talking about today, right? Not Amber.
It's Amber. Amber's the pseudonym of the person that we're talking about today.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So I am so sorry.
That's all right. We'll just move on from that. But so yeah, you worked in the field for 40 years, Steve. That's hard to believe.
Yeah, I'm a young guy. Yeah. So anyway, I have a master's degree in actually in health and therapeutic recreation, actually a bachelor's degree in education, and I started working for United Cerebral Palsy of New York State when they closed down the infamous Willowbrook State School, and I got into a master's program with Long Island University where they were bringing young professionals onto the ground. That's a long time ago when I was a young professional. Onto the grounds of Willowbrook to close the institution down. So came to Tennessee after Diane Sawyer did her expose, and I have worked for the ARC of Tennessee coming on 20 years. I was their assistant exec for 14 of those years, and I've been a lead advocate for them for, I guess, another 5 at this point.
Steve, you mentioned Willowbrook, and there's a great book out about Willowbrook right now. Dan Tomasillo, I don't know if you happen to know him or not, but he's a huge, he's a big clinician with the NAD organization, and he wrote a book called American Snake Pit. And it was, that was based on a quote from Robert F. Kennedy about the Willowbrook Institution. He called it an American Snake Pit. And so Dan was one of the first people to start deinstitutionalizing people from Willowbrook. And so he wrote a book all about his experiences in those first days of getting people into the community and the challenges, that you sometimes had with community members and so forth. It's a very good book. In fact, I've thought about reviewing it one of these times on the Clinical Consultation Network, but I hadn't done that yet. But it's certainly a very good book. I would highly recommend it.
Well, actually, I probably don't have to read it. I probably could write it. Cheryl and my wife and I worked there back in 1977 and worked with United Cerebral Palsy when they were the main organization to deinstitutionalize Willowbrook, and they actually took over 5 of the buildings from the state one day, and the governor of the state of New York got on the television and told people how he had displaced 600 people out in the community when they were still in the same buildings, in the same clothes, in the same sneakers. Pretty amazing times back then. Pretty horrible times for people with an intellectual developmental disability. So, know that story all too well, Bruce.
Well, I tell you what, when we do get around to reviewing that book, maybe you can come on and share some of your own experiences there. I think that'd be great.
Yeah, that'd be great. No problem.
And I'll just correct one piece of your errata that I had a minute ago, because I had said Harriet, and I think it was Christine, it was Henrietta North Carolina. So that's why I think you might have been confused. The name came to mind. So, okay, well, thank you all for introducing yourselves. And let me ask again, who is going to be the lead person to jump in and maybe explain a little bit about Amber's case?
I can. It doesn't matter.
All right.
I'm our ISD.
Christine, and then we can kind of just follow up on your lead.
Okay. So in March, she was released from a jail in West Tennessee and brought to Harold Jordan. She remained there several months. She then decided this person Miss Amber does not have a conservator. During her time at Harold Jordan, she did ingest things such as thumbtack, aspirin, and things like that. She had some mental health issues during that time and went ahead and went to a hospital in Nashville during that time for treatment, as well as middle, is my understanding. And then she went back to the Jordan Center. We met as a team frequently. There was a provider in place for her to be able to move to the Clarksville, Tennessee area. That was the game plan. During that time, she was under what I would call a court order to stay at Harold Jordan. However, she did not have a conservator, so if she chose to leave, then this county in West Tennessee would pick her up and take her back there. During her stay, she opted to not remain at Harold Jordan. She went back to West Tennessee. The circle was notified, and during that time, that's when Miss Chris was involved with us as a team. Her advocate, Steve Jacobs, and I, and Dr. Mathai were all involved, trying to figure out court dates, how long she would be there, contacting her probation officer, those type things. During that time frame, Mr. Jacobs drove down and met with the judge and was able to work with them. They didn't feel that jail was the right placement for her. We did get her back in middle as an emergency case and was able to get her in RHA respite. So we did an emergency plan via talking with Dr. Harris in the evening. We had a code because we weren't sure at that point if she was on the streets or if she was still in jail. Ms. Trick got clarification that evening that she was still in jail. They went to court, and then she was brought back here to Middleton. And during her time at RJ Respite, she had several different issues, including some hospitalizations. One that she was in ICU for going to a store, taking a bottle of aspirin. She ran away from respite. They followed her. However, she went into a store, sold a bottle of aspirin, took the aspirin, was in ICU at Skyline. Then Miss Amber was out again. In the last few weeks, during her stays back and forth, she's been everywhere from Middle Tennessee Mental Health to respite, then, Skyline hospital to different places. She's adjusted glass on 4 occasions. And during
let me ask everyone on the phone, put your phones on mute until you're ready to speak. So if everybody will put your phones on mute till you're ready to speak, that'll make everything run.
So there were several incidents of her leaving respite. When she would leave respite, she would walk towards the road, grab a piece of glass, put it in her mouth, and swallow it. At one point, of course, ambulance was called, 911 was called, and RHA was instructed to make sure she didn't drink any water. At one point, she even tried to get in a toilet to drink water so she could wash the glass down. She had 4 surgeries to remove the glass on 4 different occasions, and then would go back to Middle Tennessee Mental Health for a stint, and then be released again. At one point on 8/13/19, she was that was the day she was admitted to ICU for stealing the aspirin and overdosing. She was in Skyline for 5 days at that time. And
background questions just to make sure, or anybody on the group. Let me remind everybody, put your phones on. Okay, so Christine, tell me, what is Amber's age?
I'll have to pull it up for you right now.
Okay. You can just guess that. Just get us in the ballpark.
She was born in 66. Or 96. She was born in 96. Mm-hmm.
It's substantial. Okay, so 23 years old, somewhere in that.
Yes. Yes. 23 as of a few months ago.
Okay. And does she have any psychiatric diagnoses?
Yes, sir. She does. They are. Her diagnosis are mild intellectual disability, depressive disorder, borderline personality disorder, mood disorder, intermittent explosive disorder, and generalized anxiety disorder. She wears glasses. Could you hear those, sir?
I heard the diagnoses and I heard she wears glasses. I didn't hear anything after that.
She wears glasses.
The source of that.
Yeah, but you have to do it as the host. The source is on the screen currently.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think you accidentally unmuted everyone somehow because people that were muted became unmuted and they were not aware of it. So I think that's what happened.
Okay. Well, I'm sorry for that part. However, that was such a relief right there. Okay. And so, Christine, I'm sorry, and that was a little bit kind of choppy there because of all of that was going on, but now hopefully we had that corrected. And so you said she's 23 years old. You read her diagnoses, and so I wanted to make sure I took note of any particular medical diagnoses that she may have. Do you have any, like physical health diagnoses?
No, we don't have anything. Of course, I just received her from West Tennessee, and I only had what they had. But I do not have any physical issues that she's had. She is overweight, and she does seem to have some type of sensory issues. She has talked about a weighted vest and also getting a weighted blanket that she feels extremely uncomfortable in the community. So I do believe that there may be more things that we find out as we go along. Someone from Harold Jordan may have more information on that. They did take her for annual, physicals and things like that.
Okay. Jennifer Osteen, you're on the line. Was there any additional medical information?
Not that I'm aware of. I think you covered it all.
Okay.
Does she have pica? Does she have a diagnosis of pica?
Yes, she does have pica.
Okay, so that could be a partial driver right there for swallowing.
Well, let's probe into that just a little bit further. And I know we have Dr. Mathai on the phone, and I don't want to put you on the spot, Dr. Mathai. Maybe you have, I don't know how much information you have, but I'm wondering, is there any trauma history involved in this case? Is that part of the maybe etiology of some of this, or if you could put that in context for us a little bit, if you're able to.
Well, she's always, even in her earliest years, had difficulty with her emotions and impulsivity, had difficulty with all of that in school, frequently leaving school and making statements of self-harm and harming others. There are mental health issues on both sides of the family. I think give me just a moment. Usually when she voiced suicidal ideations, it was typically with a viable plan, and they typically included walking into traffic or jumping out of a second story window, overdosing on meds. There's different ways for self-injury, whether it's cutting yourself or strangling yourself. In terms of the biological family, both were, I would probably say they were alcoholics. They certainly drank. The mother was in one A&D program, which she did not complete. She is bulimic. And she has been or was in a physically abusive relationship. The dad's been hospitalized more than once for PTSD. His mother has a diagnosis of dissociative disorder and panic disorder. There's a brother diagnosed with PTSD. The dad had a son that had similar mental health difficulties, and one of Amber's siblings has been incarcerated.
Wow.
So to go back to the medical history, she has allergies to sulfa, nitrous oxide, lidocaine, and tegretol.
Okay. And is she taking psychotropic medications currently?
Yes.
Do we know what those are? Anybody?
I don't know at the moment.
Okay. That's okay. So it seems pretty apparent that she did have a pretty traumatic experience growing up. Do you feel that's safe to say at this point, based on everything that you brought up there?
Yeah, I would say so.
Yeah. And, I do know that as she exited, Harold Jordan Center, that she left there with a diagnosis of borderline personality disorder. I don't know if that had existed for her prior to that time or not, but she certainly seems to meet the criteria for that because she has at least suicidal / parasuicidal reactions. She is having extreme problems with emotional discontrol, and she has an invalidating experience earlier in her life. So all of those things kind of combine to help move us in the direction of giving her that diagnosis. So what, Christine, everybody, this question, I guess, will be open to everybody. But actually, before I do that, let me ask Jennifer Osteen to come on and tell a little bit more about the experience at Harold Jordan Center and what kinds of other observations you may have had there.
Okay. So during her time here at HPC, we really didn't have a lot of very significant behaviors out of her. It took me a minute to even decide to do a behavior support plan for her, just because they were low in frequency behaviors. We did start seeing some increases in SIB, like you said earlier, the swallowing of dangerous items. She had a few instances where she went out to a routine doctor's appointment, such as a gynecologist, and made statements there that she was not safe and needed to be hospitalized for that. So that was one of our bigger barriers with her during her time here. We never required any sort of manual restraint. We never had to use anything like that with her. Very redirectable.
So was she successful in swallowing objects while she was there?
Yes. And then the first 2 times she did it, we did send her out, and I think it was the 3rd time she had swallowed. We decided to call mobile X-ray to come out, and just to reduce the attention she would get at the hospital, because she had told us that she did all these things to gain access to hospitals because she got more attention there, good food, the nurses were nice. So we decided to call mobile X-ray, and they came out and evaluated her and said it was okay for her to remain in our care and just wait for the item to pass.
Okay. And did those swallowing incidents tend to happen while she was out somewhere, or did they also happen there at the facility?
I believe they all happened in the facility.
Oh, okay. I thought you said when you went out to the doctor that was a time when it happened, but
she would just make statements that she was unsafe at the doctor's appointment.
Oh, okay. So she was saying she was unsafe.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, gotcha. All right. All right. So maybe, Christine, if you could give us a little bit of an update, or Steve, or whoever is most appropriate, to tell us a little bit about what's going on with her now.
On Friday afternoon, she talked to her, Friday probably about 10:30, 11 o'clock, I'm not exactly sure of the time. She had talked to her probation officer, in West. She had made a call from the respite house, is my understanding. At that time, the probation officer explained to her she was no longer on probation. We had located her a provider here in Middle Tennessee, but we had already, while she was hospitalized, the COS had met and just talked about different types of things that we would probably need to put in place for her safety when she went into the community and had a community supported living home, and at what level we would need to support her at. So during that time, once she had talked to her probation officer and she understood that she was no longer on probation, she opted to walk out of respite. And she did so. I tried to talk to her on the phone and explain, told her, look, you don't have a phone, you don't have a place to go. And she was adamant that she wanted to go to the mission for the first night, and then after that, she would figure out what she was going to do. I talked to Christina during that time as well as the staff at RHA, and the van followed the protocol. They also had her a one-on-one staff as well, just for Heather. Yes, sir.
Let me let Christine and Ruben pick up there and kind of just talk a little bit about that, plus their experience with her at RHA Respite.
So Christine is correct. When Amber decided she wanted to go to the mission, what we decided to do is to have staff followed her, and she was adamant that she wanted to go, and we tried to redirect her, and I know Christine talked with her at length. The staff tried to talk to her at length. I tried to talk to her at length. And nothing that we, discussed with her seemed to work at all. So, you left
So you were trying to talk her into coming back and saying
options, yeah. We want to redirect her to be safe, yeah.
Okay.
And it didn't, nothing we said to her seemed to work at all. Which is what I think your experience was with her, right, Ruben?
Yeah, when Amber first got to the respite, I had a discussion with her about, what our future looked like, what did she want to do, and, we talked about, she knew all the protocols as far as going to the hospital and everything, and, that's what she liked, and that's what she did. She did things to get there for her attention. I redirected her a lot, just verbally. We never had a problem. We never had to use CPI or anything. She gets hyped up and want to fight other kids, and you redirect her, she's okay. But every time that she swallowed something, she walked off the campus to do it, and I was sitting right there with her when she swallowed it. So the glass anyway. But yeah, she just, like I said, I don't know if it's more behavioral psychology. I don't know. I just know that when she make her mind up to do something, that's what she wants to do.
Yeah. And Steve Jacobs, you're on the line, and you had told me earlier that you had a lot of experience with Amber, and so I wondered if maybe you could come on and give your perspective.
Yeah, so her instability has been going on for, I think I know her for about 5 years, so she has been in a constant state of chaos during that entire period. She has gone from one provider to another. She was at Benchmark, and then when Benchmark closed down, she went to another provider. She was placed in a provider here in Middle Tennessee that had a difficult time providing support to her. They sent her to West Tennessee. In West Tennessee, she ended up going to several mental health facilities. She ended up going to jail. So it was a constant state of change for her, where she'd be at the house, then she'd be in a mental health hospital, then she'd come back to the house, then she'd go to jail, then she'd come back to the house, then she'd go to another facility. So this turmoil that seems to surround her has been ongoing. Excuse me 1 second. I'm on the phone. I apologize. Okay. Again, we had a lot of people working together to try to support Heather. So I could only give just tremendous kudos to Dr. Mathai, to Christine as her ISC, to Ruben and the staff at the RHA Respite, to Jennifer and the staff at the Harold Jordan Center, to the court system in Madison County, which worked with us. I went there to get her out of jail 2 times. The district attorney and the public defenders all worked to get Heather back into the community. Special thanks to support solutions who went out of their way to say they would be able to develop a home for her as long as it was in Clarksville, where they had a network of supports in place that could respond to her emergencies. So we have gone to great lengths to try to create a situation for Heather to succeed. And she has outwitted us all over and over and over and over again. She's pretty amazing. You have to love Heather. She's tough as nails, and she's wonderful. But she's difficult to support.
Yeah, and it seems like one of the most important things to understand about her is that a lot of this has its roots in some of the trauma that she's experienced previously. I think once you understand that piece, it really kind of, things start to fall in order a little bit more. Now,
Bruce, along those lines, okay, I think she was often rescued in her home environment by the police being called out to the home for whatever emergencies were taking place in the home. So she loves a man in uniform, like ambulance driver, a police officer, a sheriff's officer. She'll be in the middle of a crisis and start calling him cutie pie.
Under this circumstance, I guess what you're saying is that makes perfect sense from her history. That's sort of her respite in a sense. That if she starts to feel anxious about something or concerned, that if the police come, that's kind of putting everything back in order again, and that somebody's there to you said, I think you used the word rescue, didn't you?
Yeah, absolutely.
And so in some sense, all of this emergency stuff that goes on may kind of fit in that same category. But these are ways that she finds to sort of rescue herself from, these persistent concerns and anxiety that she's feeling. So Christine, you worked with her some in most recent days to try to talk to her about something. So, she's gone to a new agency now, and you were talking to her about some of the restrictions that were needed. And so she doesn't have a conservator, as we had discussed before. That has been requested on the part of the circle support for her. Yet it has not been done, and there have been some concerns on the part of the department that she may actually have the capacity to consent. And so, not wanting to take that right away from her. But can you talk a little bit about the experience that you had with her most recently and the work that you did with her to discuss the restrictions that the circles felt were needed and how those were implemented?
Yes, sir. On Friday night, we submitted an emergency plan pending we could locate her. Okay, she went to the mission. During that time, the new agency went to see her at the mission. Within 2 hours of her leaving respite, there were 3 police cars there, and an ambulance had to be called. She was trying to harm herself. She went hospital to hospital until 2 a.m. The police nor the agency could locate her. There was a bolo out for her on Friday evening. Saturday evening she was found at 10:30. An M code was given, and during that time she went to the provider agency. She's in an apartment right now, and I visited her with someone from regional office yesterday, and we discussed and talked about.
Say who that was. So that was.
That was Miss Baskerville, Sherry Baskerville.
Baskerville with Customer Focused Services.
Yes, sir.
Proceed.
And when we went to see her, the first initial thing was she was extremely afraid of Miss Baskerville and started screaming and hollering and thinking that she had a gun and mace. I attempted to calm her. She sat on the couch in a fetal type position with, I'm sorry, somebody walked in the door and all my dogs started barking. She was sitting in a fetal type position, on the couch with her staff hugging her. She closed her eyes tightly and would not respond. At that time, she wanted someone to call Steve. Sherry attempted to let her know that we could call Steve, that she even had his number, but the staff ended up calling him, Steve explained to her that she was her friend, you know, his friend as well as would be her friend, and she calmed down after that. During that time frame, we talked a little bit, you know, just about her apartment. She calmed down a little bit. She wanted to sit on the floor. So I sat on the floor with her. She had a small teddy bear that she held very tightly and kind of rocked back and forth during that time. I discussed with her, we looked at her kitchen, her food, and then she showed me her bedroom. Then she settled down, and during that time, we went ahead and discussed everything, you know, about the conservatorship. And I asked her first, did she know what conservatorship was? She said that she did a little bit, and Ms. Sherry chimed in and talked to her about that as well, what exactly that means. And I said, do you feel like you might need a conservator to help you make decisions? And she shook her head yes, and then she said she had a few more questions about it. We discussed, you know, hospitalizations, helping, you know, make placement decisions for you. She had questions about would her circle be involved, and would this person come to her circle? Would they listen to her circle members? And I said, well, yes, you know, that is what part of being a conservator. They would talk to you, see what you want, as well as the input from her circle. During that time, she had a friend, apparently, that has a conservator, and she said she felt like her friend wasn't listened, that she wasn't heard by her conservator. She said that the conservator just didn't listen. And Ms. Sherry talked to her about that, and she said, you know, that's something, and if you want to tell me that person's name later, Heather, you can, because that's an important part of them listening to what you want if you have a conservator. So I think she understood the process of conservatorship and what that entails. At one point, she said, you know, I would like my mom to be conservator, but she's not able. She just would not be the right conservator for me. And I knew what that meant, but I didn't feel at that time she wanted me to discuss it with the people in the room. So we did not. And I talked to her about what she thought would be safe for us to look at to make her life better and for her to feel safe in her home. And I talked to her about the restrictions the circle had met about and discussed. And, you know, we talked about, and when she was in West, she was actually locked in rooms. Every door was locked. And so she was basically locked in her house. And as a circle, we never felt that that was appropriate for her. And it was brought up, what about chimes, you know, on the doors and things, because she would barricade herself in a room and cause self-harm and those type things, or elope, which is frequently she does. So she said she thought chimes would be a really good thing, and she would like that. And then we discussed the sharps restriction, and she said, I want that. I need that, and I want that. And we had evoked the emergency sharp restriction and chemical lockup for her because of the ingestion and also the insertion issues. She felt that her shampoo needed to be locked, all personal hygiene. She also, she did not feel she needed a telephone restriction. And I asked her, I said, why do you not think that you want one? And she said, I just feel like if I want to call my family, I should be able to call them. And so I said, what are you going to do if you get upset? Because I know sometimes you have issues with your mom. What are you going to do? And she said, you know what? I'm just going to hang up the phone and not talk to her and just take time to cool off. And so I totally wrote no on that restriction. So she doesn't have a phone restriction, and I don't feel that we need to pursue that. She feels like she knows who she can call and appropriate times to call, and she wants to give it a chance to see if she can be appropriate with a telephone. She asked for a tablet and wanted access to be able to do Facebook with her family. And she specifically asked for, when she received the tablet, would we go ahead and put a protective cover on it so she did not break it if she was upset. I thought that was a great idea. She come up with it, and the staff will check every hour, and she agreed to that. And we asked her what time frame she thought that they could look at it to make sure that she was being safe on the computer. And I also discussed with her whatever we put on a computer, even if we take it down, like if I say help me, or if we say something to somebody that we're mad at that maybe we don't mean, the police could knock at our door, so we have to think about our actions on the computer even if we take it down. And she said, you know, she understood that and that she felt like she could make really good decisions on Facebooking her family and being able to put appropriate information out. And she felt like if her staff looked at her computer every hour to make sure that she was being safe while she was utilizing it, that she wanted access to a computer. So I thought it was totally appropriate, and she asked for us to write that up, and so I did. She said she does not feel safe in a bedroom with a window. We talked about plexi, and she feels that that's very needed in her apartment. And she feels safe in a living room, and she wants to sleep with just the mattress on the floor in the living room. And that's what she would like to do. So I will write that in her ISP that she will continue that. She has night terrors, and she wanted me to discuss that a little bit with the people there. I talked to them a little bit about that, and I feel that that's also, she had mentioned a weighted blanket again, and feeling like she needs to feel secure. There's a balcony. She's on a second story. So she said, you know, I'd really like to go out there sometimes. And I said, well, what do you think would make it, you know, safe for you to go out there and hang out on your balcony? Because it is her balcony. So I said, what would you think would be appropriate? And Miss Sherry talked to her about, what if we got you a chair to sit out there and just kind of see people going by? And she said that she would like that, and she would like one staff with her on the balcony at all times, and the other staff right next to the inside of the glass door. And I said, well, how do you feel if you're not feeling well? How do you feel about that staying locked? And she said she thought that was a good idea, that we needed to keep it locked unless she was having a really good day and she just wanted to go sit on her balcony. But she didn't want both staff on the balcony, just one, because she thought it, you know, looked kind of strange for three people to all be looking over the balcony together. And I thought that was very appropriate for her to have that, because literally it's within arm's reach from the couch to the glass door. So she's a two-level individual, with 24-hour staff, two staff around the clock. We discussed protocols for when her family comes, and, you know, I said, can I discuss that with Miss Sherry? And she said, yes, that would be okay. And I said, sometimes her mom drinks, and she chimed in and said, if I smell alcohol in my mom's breath, that's not okay with me. And I want to go to the bathroom and stay in there. And that's the signal for my staff to tell her to leave. Okay. I thought it was a great idea. Yeah. And so at Harold Jordan and at other places she stayed at, she would write help or kidnapped or whatever on her hand and hold it up in the window when she was going in the community. And I said, can we talk about that? And she said, yes. And I said, what makes you feel like you need to do that? You know, what can we do to make it better for you to go in the community? And she said, I would like to use the same signal with my staff. If it's community, we're going to go out in the community, and I'm not feeling okay, I'm going to tell them, hey, I'm going to the restroom. And they need to know that that's time they need to give me, just to give me a little break before we go somewhere. So I thought that was really great for her to be able to do that.
I think it's great, and I think your facilitation of that is outstanding. And so let me just quickly mention a couple things. I might get Michelle to come on here in just a second, but so this was because she does not have a conservator, she is the person who is consenting here. And you went through the restrictions. You pointed out the benefits and the risks of each one. You had a discussion with her, and she had some modifications to those things that you were originally proposing.
I can get him.
By and large, she accepted the reasoning behind a lot of those things, it seems to me. And so let me just quickly review. There are three elements of the capacity to consent. Those elements are, first of all, rationality, that the person is basically able to weigh the pros and cons of something, and that they, you know, are able to kind of think about that and think about what would be the best thing to do. The second part of it is that they have enough information. So that's this idea of knowing what the risks and benefits are. And so she indicates here, at least in this circumstance, some possession of the information needed to make those decisions. The third element of capacity to consent is that a person can't be coerced or cannot be pressed or deceived somehow into agreeing to something that they don't really agree with. And she actually, I think on 2 occasions in what you said, demonstrated that ability by saying, no, I don't want this, I don't want this phone restriction in the way that it was. And there was one other where she had kind of objected to the way that it was proposed, and proposed something different instead.
Yes.
And so each of those things indicate that at least in this circumstance, now the capacity of consent is not a permanent fixture, it can come and go. And I know that the circle has been concerned about other times where she's not making appropriate decision. And I don't want to indicate that going along with everything that you have put out there. In fact, if she had gone along with everything you said without much question or saying anything about it, I would certainly, under that circumstance, be questioning her capacity. And I'm not arguing that this is not my argument that she does not need a conservator. It's only to say that under this one specific circumstance, she demonstrated those elements that I just described. I mean, would you agree with me on that, or is there do you have any counterpoint that you want to, or anybody on the circle that knows her?
At the end of the conversation, she said, I asked her again, I said, have you, thought about conservatorship? How do you feel about that? And she said yes, that she feels that she needs one. And she also mentioned some additional things that she only wanted to use plastic silverware, because we discussed the other types of silverware, and she said, no, I only want plastic, and I want it locked, and I don't need access to ballpoint pens. I've used those before and drank them. So I feel like she understood and felt safe to be able to voice how she felt at the time.
Yeah. Well, I have a few minutes left, so I want to give others an opportunity to respond as well. Steve, you had some opinions about this, and Dr. Mathai.
For Heather's sake, I think getting her someplace where she can be surrounded by people that can work clinically with her for any length of time is going to be a positive change in the erratic life that she's been living for a long, long time. So if nothing else, if there's some kind of a temporary conservatorship that we can get in place just until we're able to stabilize her, I would very much be in favor of a conservator to work with her, and I mean work with her, not tell her what to do, but to work with her and be able to give the proper clinicians the ability to work with her at any length of time.
So your reasoning behind maybe the need for a conservator is because you feel that she needs that level of treatment and that she won't agree with it? Am I understanding you correctly, or is that misread that?
Well, like myself, Heather and I have a lot in common. We're often both our own worst enemies. And, Heather, when faced with a situation, is going to pull out of it if we can't, if we don't have any ability to have her maintain whatever program is working with her, and she could just come and go. I mean, she kind of exhibited that the other day. I mean, Ruben and his staff over at RHA Respite do a great job. I love Ruben. He's really great with the folks. And, there's really nothing that he can do to stop her when she's ready to leave, when she's ready to walk out. Busy thoroughfares going down to Gallatin Road. We were looking for her the other day before we could find out where she was. We were looking all over for her. She's going to make those kind of decisions that are going to put her put herself in jeopardy. She won't have her medications with her. She often leaves without shoes on her feet, no matter how hot the sidewalks are. She has no money in her pocket to buy anything, purchase anything. She's totally vulnerable to whatever element society has that would take advantage of a young lady like herself.
Yeah. Dr. Mathai, do you have some additional information you want to share? Or?
No, I don't. Unless you have something specific.
No, I just wondered if you had an opinion that you wanted to share there. So, I see some of the information that's out there and some of the concerns with this situation with, I think this is one of those circumstances where there is no clear, like, okay, this is what it is. And I do want to just say, that when you take someone's right to make decisions away, Steve, you made a comment there, not to hang you up on your words, but where, you make some decisions. I think I could apply that same standard to myself and say I make some decisions sometimes that are not the best decisions in the world. And that I might be my own worst enemy at times. And yet, I remain my own decision maker under those circumstances. And, I do feel like one of the themes that has come out within the context of this whole discussion is one of trust. Because, it was remarkable to me that a phone call to you, Steve, and your vouching on behalf of Sherry was enough to turn her around and to have her, continue with that without any further difficulty and to gather herself and to be able to participate in a conversation. And it seems to me that certainly if we get a conservator in place and that conservator were to ensure that that same process occurred with everything that was decided, that would be great. But one of the things that we're trying to do with a person with borderline personality disorder is validate their decision making. Well, there couldn't be stronger invalidation of someone's decision making than to say someone else is going to have to make these decisions for you. Now, are there circumstances where that has to be done? Absolutely, and we have a number of them. Some false positives, some false negatives, but many of them are in place where they need to be in place. But when you're able to work through this process and continually, to work through this process with her, I think there's a therapeutic aspect to that. There's value in what she learned through the interaction that Christine had with her the other day, and it would be a really bad thing if they got lost. We're over time, but I am going to give this over to Michelle Bagby real quick so she can talk a little bit about the emergency restriction component of our human rights review policy, just so we can be sure that we all have a clear understanding of how that works. Michelle, can you do that for us real quick?
If it'll let me unmute myself, I will.
Okay. I think you did.
All right, good. I'm just going to stop sharing because it'll be quicker not to. Okay.
And somebody else say Christine did a perfect job of doing the initial part of that.
Yeah, she did, and I do want to commend her because it sounds like the conversation they had was very productive and allowed both parties to kind of come to an agreement on something they could get behind. But so emergency rights restrictions, just to give everybody a little bit of information on those, are restrictions that are implemented when there's an imminent risk of harm to the person themselves or to others by the person supported. When those are put in place, you do have to try to seek informed consent within 1 day, and if you don't get it within 5 days, you do have to remove that restriction, and it has to be reviewed by a Human Rights Committee. So that's kind of the caveat that allows for those dangerous situations to have a quick way to put a restriction in place when needed if there's not a conservator or if the conservator can't be reached in the moment. So they are a good option.
There's an emergency restriction policy. They didn't really even have to have the consent initially when that was done. They have to seek that.
Yes.
as quickly as possible afterward.
Yes. And just to give you a reference as well, this is all in the Human Rights Review Policy 80.6.1 on pages 7 and 8 if you need to see those requirements after an emergency rights restriction is implemented.
Okay. Thank you for that. And I do want to reassure the circle of support that we are reconsidering your request for conservatorship for her. And we're consulting with Dr. Victor Schuler and the folks at Earl Jordan Center to try to come to a conclusion about that. Of course, that is, we're only one method of seeking that, but that is, where we are with this, and we will respond to you in a timely fashion regarding that. This has been a great conversation today. Actually, Trey, I am going to ask that we also get this one scheduled for a follow-up at a later point so we can see a little bit more about how things are going and, whether things that have been agreed upon have been effective moving forward and how well this current placement that she has is working. And so that, again, I think we can continue to learn from this case. But one other thing I want to mention about this is that we didn't get into enough, I think, is about what kind of treatment do we need to be providing for her, trying to get her engaged in. I did understand that Trey was telling me that she went to some sort of a group, support group at the ARC, Christine.
She went to the women's group this morning at regional office with Dr. Jenny. Steve and I were there as well, and some of the other people that she knew from a previous home.
And what is the focus of that group? Dr. Mathai, you were leading the group?
Well, they're setting the tone. The participants are.
Okay. I see. So it's been separate.
So the idea behind it, Bruce, is that we have a lot of people that have been through the same type of crisis in their family life, and they don't have a very strong network of friends, people to share experiences with. So we opened it up so that people could get together to kind of talk about what it is that is on their minds that they'd like to talk about and try to create a sense of community among those women that have been through so much in their life.
Well, that's outstanding, and I think that is a very much a move in a positive direction. So I'd be interested to see if she continues to do that and how well she participates in that. So that, because these are the whole building blocks, I think, of getting her engaged more positively. Look, I know this is a difficult case, and so, as I said, I think we'll want to schedule this for follow-up. I do want to thank everybody who came on the phone today and talked about the case and gave us information. This is a fascinating case, and I'd like to schedule a follow-up so that we can get the engagement of our audience more in discussing it. But I do appreciate you all coming on. This has been the Clinical Consultation Network. We do this every Tuesday from 1:30 to 2:30. Today we did it from 1:30 to 2:38, but generally from 1:30 to 2:30. So please join us each week here on the Clinical Consultation Network. See you next time.